Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. Inside of this week's show, 3 rounds for you. Inside of round number 1, we will go over the major headlines in the world of mixed martial arts. In round number 2, we're going to break down the main card from the Ultimate Fighter 19 finale from Las Vegas. And in round number 3, also from Las Vegas, we will break down the main card of UFC 175, which was on pay-per-view this past Saturday. I am, of course, your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, The Juice, Dave Sadler. And Dave, before we get to, you're going to have pretty much round 1 to talk about wherever you want, because you had a tremendous weekend out there in Vegas, as you got to see not 1, but 2 fights. You also got to go to the UFC Fan Expo for 2 days, so you had a tremendous time out there. But I just wanted to mention that, of course, we're in round number 1, brought to you by our friends at VigilanteMMA.com. You could follow them on Twitter at VigilanteMMA. And I just want to let the people know that I had a pretty good weekend, not as good as Dave. It was still pretty good. It's just one of those weekends where you go to work and you just completely crush it. I mean, I know I normally crush it every single day. As people know, if you follow me on Twitter, that's my actual job, is crushing it. But we're the company that pays me the bills. Just I've had a fantastic weekend and set some company records. So I had a really good weekend. Made that quiche, as they like to say. So, but Dave, let's get to you here and start first with our major headline in round number 1, which is, of course, you going to Las Vegas this weekend, where you spent a lot of quiche.
Yes, I did, and I'm still recovering from Las Vegas. They call it Sin City. I don't think I created, or I don't think I sinned, but yikes, that place is rough. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's do the expo first, and then your fight experiences both. Let's start with the expo. I guess
Okay.
day 1, and then maybe kind of day 2, some of the stuff you did, saw, got, bought,
All right.
sold.
Well, when I was at the
Stuff like
expo day 1, I was working at Tiger Muay Thai, which is the main reason I was out there. Help the guys out, help Mr. Ebersol's people out, so they didn't have to send a bunch of people from Thailand. So that was cool. Jamie Varner came by the booth, sat with us for a little bit, signed some autographs. Neil Magny was there. Anthony Njokuani was there. I ended up, Juliana Pena, winner of the Ultimate Fighter, we gave her a couple Tiger Muay Thai shirts, took a selfie on my phone and tweeted it out, and then we had a nice little Twitter conversation. So I guess we're pals now. Ran into my good friend and everybody's favorite female fighter, Kat Zingano. We ran into her about 11 times in 11 of the most random places ever. Just like, walking outside just to warm up a little bit because it was so cool. And, oh, there's Kat Zingano. Just really weird spots. But I did run in, Jim, those sketch cards that I have of Kat Zingano that Topps puts out?
Yes, yeah, you've shown me them, and you're, what is it, like, what do you got, like 5 pages of Kat Zingano? The 9 pocket pages, you got like 5 pages of those now?
Yeah, well, they have the sketch cards where Topps gets some artists, a couple different artists, and they do sketch cards where the guys just actually draw the cards, and that's all it is, and there's only one. Well, I was lucky enough to run into one of the guys, and I believe his name is James Michael Smith, and he's from North Carolina, but he was on like a jiu-jitsu road trip. And check these out. He designed the Topps sketch cards for Kat. They did like 3 or 4 for Kat, and these aren't the ones that I actually have, but he was nice enough to give me copies of it, and he signed them, and then he gave me an extra set in case I see Kat to get those signed. So that was pretty cool. I always like one-of-a-kind things, and I got more one-of-a-kind things. So, yeah, that was pretty neat. And then, where are we at? Day 2, I guess. Day 2 was more of the same. The booth next to ours was on fire. I think it was called Adrenaline Junkies T-shirt. Matt Hughes is a part of it. They had Juliana Pena, Matt Hughes, Chuck Liddell sat there. The booth across from us was those Monster headphones, Jim, and Tito Ortiz stopped by. So like I literally had the faces of the UFC, like what built the UFC, right in front of me, and BJPenn.com was right behind us. So there was quite a lot of big names floating around. GSP was there Saturday, and his line was ridiculous. No way I'd ever wait in that kind of a line. But
Yeah, I bet.
trying to think. Yeah, as you know, I have Fight Pass. Some of you guys, we've kind of been over it. Some of you guys like it, some of you guys don't. But if you had an account, you could go up and spin a big wheel and win certain prizes. And show you what I got. See that on the screen there, Jim?
Is that for real? You got a free year?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, did you? What did you have? Did they just were giving those out, and you just happened to get one, or how did that work out?
No, I spun the big wheel and it went dick 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 dick. Oh, one free year. It was either you could win like a lanyard or like a phone case or whatever, and I got a free year. They had a free month. Lots of different prizes, but they had a computer right there. They canceled my account right on the spot so that my credit card didn't get charged anymore, and then I can plug that in. I'll probably plug it in a little bit later. And then for my round 5 collection, I got this one. Benson Henderson, the UFC
Now,
belt.
was that an Expo exclusive?
No, they don't have Expo exclusives anymore because the company went under.
Okay.
So
Well, that's still cool anyway.
oh yeah. It's cool because I know that the company who makes those doesn't exist anymore. But the guys at walkoutwear.com, you can check them out. They have all the figures. They're in talks with the UFC of getting the brand to kind of restart round 5 to make that happen. But it's still cool. The figures are old, but you see these fans walking out with just boxes and boxes of them. People still love them, even though they're a little bit older. People are still real big fans. So it was cool, Jim. If you're a fan of mixed martial arts, the UFC, the Fan Expo is what's the best way? It's a can't miss thing. You have to go to it. It's awesome. I mean, it really is. Just like literally, like walking over to where they had the bathrooms or the whatever. It was like, oh, there goes Smiling Sam Alvey. Oh, there goes Bigfoot Silva. Oh, there goes Herb Dean. It was just like, dude, they're everywhere. And I mean, there's guys I had. Some of my friends were out there. They've got their binders and they're all organized and everything. Me, I was just taking pictures with as many fighters as I could. But it's a great time. It's totally worth every dollar spent.
So I guess with you rubbing elbows and meeting all these different fighters and contacts and booth and stuff, needless to say, Beyond the Cage is going to go bigger and better coming here in the future. Because I mean, you just mentioned a whole bunch of fighters and a whole bunch of sites and outlets, and I know you had to be dropping Beyond the Cage. So I got to feel like that helped out the show.
How about this? I already texted you immediately after it happened, but how about I spoke to Brian Stan for a good 5 minutes, and he gave me the info of who I should contact in order to get him on the show. So I'm going to pass the actual email address on to you so you can make some contacts. But Brian Stan would be that'd be one for the record books because that's a guy I want to talk to, and I want to talk to for a long time. He was awesome when we spoke. So I mean, he's one of those guys, Jim. He's got a lot of stuff on his plate. I met him on Thursday night outside the MMA Junkie Studios. And then Friday morning I went to breakfast, and he saw me, and he was like, hey, brother. He's like, it was good seeing you last night. Like, pretty good memory considering all the people that he met. So.
Well, I mean, it helps that you were a Marine, too. I think that's probably why that stuck out.
Yeah. Let me see if I can show you. Stall for time, Jim. Stall for time.
Well,
Uh,
and speaking of interviews, we have our good friend Darren Cruikshank will be having a fight here at the end of the month, so we're definitely working to get him back on the show. He's a great guest to have on. And also, Dave, you're the one that hooked us up with the original contact, but we're going to have probably, I'm assuming he's going to win, so we're definitely going to have to get Alex White back on the show, UFC 145-pound fighter. We're going to try to get him back on. And I'm missing somebody.
okay, your time is good.
But those are two interviews that we're trying to get, just so people are wondering.
So I don't know how well people can see this, but here's me and Brian Stan. Whoops, it's a tap out.
Well, it was there. It came through clear from what I'm seeing. So
I'm just scrolling through my phone, and I met in about 10 minutes. I met Matt Mitrione, T.J. Dillashaw, Kenny Florian, Brian Stan, and of course the only fighter that you never raise your hand to in a photo, ever. You never ever raise your hand to her in a photo. That's just not good business, my friends. But no, seriously, Jim, it was ridiculous, and we haven't even been to the fights yet. But Diego Lima was on the TUF finale. His brother Douglas Lima was just walking around. Nobody said a word to him. Eddie Alvarez was there, or I'm sorry, Michael Chandler was there. Nobody said a word to him. Glover Teixeira. Just going through my phone real quick. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to tell you, Jim. That's about it.
all right. Well, and of course, if you want to see those photos, you'll definitely have to watch this version, the video version, and not the audio version. Otherwise, you'll miss out on some of the stuff Dave's going to be showing throughout the course of the broadcast. So I guess that's the one perk when we do those video shows. We can have visual aids, so to speak.
Me and Roxanne.
There you go.
I don't know.
That was your expo experience. Definitely good. I think you post on your Facebook and Twitter your links and stuff, any cards you got and photos. I know you like putting that stuff out there to share because you're always wheeling and dealing, Dave. So
Yeah.
definitely, if people are interested in any of this stuff, definitely hit Dave up on Twitter at Vigilante Juice. I know he's always trying to work out a deal, much like myself. And then, yeah, hang on, he's about to show the picture of Juliana Pena now.
Nice. Yep, that's her. She took a selfie on my phone.
I
Neil
have-
Magny.
I
How
have
about
to
this
say
one?
something real quick on the. All right, show that one real quick.
Jen's Little Evil Pulver. That's what's up.
I gotta say
Anyway,
something
go
on the Pena. Now, it's funny. You're like, oh, we're now buds now. When we were talking about this past season of TUF, now I think it's mainly because she's kind of friends with Misha Tate and Brian Caraway. That's kind of where she got her start, and she was on Team Misha Tate. But I got to be honest, you weren't that big of a fan of her. Now all of a sudden you met her in person. She took a selfie on your phone. You're like, oh man, she's like my favorite fighter of all time. Like I just find like she turned like really quick, and you're like she went up like 7 notches on your belt. Like she went up pretty high. And I just thought that was a little funny. Not that you hated her, but you know what I mean. She definitely went up notches on your belt.
No, my point is this. I was given instructions from Tiger Muay Thai that if fighters came by to hook them up with gear to make sure they take pictures and stuff. So like I was there and I'm like, well, she won the Ultimate Fighter. I'm like, that should be a big enough name to give gear to. And I took a picture of her and she's like, no, let me take a selfie, and then tweeted at me. And I'm like, okay. So if you follow my Twitter, it says, hey, thanks Venezuelan Vixen for stopping by the at Tiger Muay Thai booth at the Fan Expo. And what happened was one of my friends on Twitter goes, hey, did you get a glove signed? And I said, no. I said, it was just a short visit. I was like, she just came by. But then we had like a 10-minute conversation at the fights via Twitter. And she was like, well, I can come by. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it was just a very weird. And I mean, I guess we're friends now. Like, she saw me and she was like, hey, she waved. And I was like, completely awkward. Whatever. She's not going to fight for 2 years, and at that point, Cattle have been champ for like a year and a half, so it won't matter.
See, that's what I wanted to get out of you. All right, good. All right, all right. Let's get this real quickly sandwiched, I guess, in here. Speaking of interviews, we had Cody Bollinger from the World Series of Fighting. Um, that's not him here. There is it? No, that's
Stipe Miocic.
yeah. Unfortunately, his teammate there at Strong Style, Jessica I, for some reason wasn't able to come. So I know you and I were looking forward to getting some signed merch from her, and of course meeting her in person, at least for you, Dave. But alas, we weren't able to. But uh, oh well, we'll definitely get her back on the show again. And yeah, Cody Bollinger, he fought World Series Fighting 11. We had him on the show a couple weeks ago in preparation for his fight. That leads us to World Series of Fighting 11, which, if you didn't know, was actually shown on Saturday, July 5th. And you might have missed it because, first of all, it was on Saturday and sandwiched with all the other World Cup and 4th of July festivities, not only the UFC festivities, but it was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. So pretty easy to miss. If you're scrolling through the DVR thinking it's like at 8 o'clock there on NBC, no, it was at 4 o'clock, so it might have been missed. It was over in Florida, and I guess we'll just start with Cody's fight, Dave, because that's who we talked to. And he was saying, this fight we're going to see the real Cody Bollinger. The last fight he had a rib injury. He couldn't do some things that he wanted to do, especially in the grappling department, but even in the stand-up, because that really affects your movement and breathing when you have hurt ribs. You can't really. It's hard to duck and kind of move as much as with the ribs, restricts your movement, and definitely you don't want to get kicked or punched there. So that maybe his hands are trying to protect his ribs, and you could definitely tell his performance wasn't what we kind of saw on The Ultimate Fighter, even though that it was just one fight on The Ultimate Fighter. But we tell it was a different Cody Bollinger against Tyson Nam, and this time around against Pablo Alfonso, maybe a little less known of opponent, Dave. But when you have a lesser known opponent and you're the favorite, you got to prove that you're better than them and put them away early, and that's exactly what Cody did. I thought he just blitzed Alfonso from the start, just came right at him, and then he landed that huge power takedown, was able to go around and transition to get the finish there very early in the first round, and officially won by rear naked choke at the 237 marker. And if this doesn't show that he's ready for Marlon Moraes and a shot at the World Series of Fighting bantamweight title, I'm not sure what does.
Yeah, he looked very impressive in victory. He, like you said, Jim, he had to do exactly what happened. Go out there and prove that you're the guy that should be, victorious and should get that title shot. The only thing, obviously, I was in Vegas. Was there any talk about what happened with the weight issue? Because it sounded like he came in 1.5 pounds over. Did you hear anything about that?
I was watching the broadcast and I had the audio and everything, and I didn't really hear them make a reference to it. Now, it might have been before some of the pre-fight stuff, and sometimes I fast forward through that. So, as far as I could tell, I didn't hear anything. Now, was that on the first attempt he missed weight and then he made it on the second, or did he officially go overweight for this fight? Because I didn't hear that.
No, from everything that I read, Jim. It said because they kept talking about him being fined 20% of his purse, so he must have missed it. Look, I like Cody. I think everything that he does. I like the type of fighter that he is. I just he has to make that weight at 135, otherwise that title fight doesn't count. And I don't know if it was a matter of, like he just stopped sweating or what it was, but hopefully it gets figured out because he's very exciting. And just like I think it was it Kenny and Boss on? Were they the ones talking?
I believe it was Kenny and Boss this time.
Yeah, I think it was Kenny who said, this is a guy that, he's kind of controversial, he's brash. He goes out there and he finishes fights, and that's what the World Series of Fighting needs, and that's exactly true. So, whatever the problem was with the weight, I hope it gets figured out, and I hope we get to see him for fight for the belt. Actually, for the love of live broadcast, look at this article. Hold on one second.
Well, if you look at Cody Bollinger, he's tried to fight at 135 pounds 4 times, and he's missed weight twice, I guess you could say, because the Ultimate Fighter time, he made the fight to get into the cast, then he missed weight. His first fight in the World Series of Fighting made weight, and then this one missed. So I guess he's at a 50% ratio every other one. So if his next fight's for the title, in theory, following the pattern, he should make the weight, right?
Correct. Here it is, right here. Not only did Cody Bollinger, this is off of MMA Mania, not only did Cody submit Paulo Alfonso this past weekend, he confirmed it would be his last fight in the bantamweight division, even if a potential title shot against Marlon Moraes could be on the horizon. This is what Cody said, quote, "I feel like I had to come out and put on a show. After my last fight, I think the owners of the World Series of Fighting were looking for a little more action. I came in here with a lot of hype, and tonight I knew I had to put on a show. I'd love to fight Moraes, but I'm done fighting at 35. My body can't take it. I'm going up to 45, and we'll fight there."
Well,
so there you go.
There you go. Well, I think either way, though, if he was about to get a title shot at 35, we're going to talk. I think the 45 champion is now, oh, geez, what's his name? It was like he just beat Georgie Karakhanyan. It wasn't Rick Jones, was it? It was something like that, though, right? God, why is the name escaping me?
Mike Jones? What?
It was Rick Glenn. Rick Glenn. Okay,
Yeah.
So Rick Glenn's the 145 champion. He beats Karakhanyan, finishes him. Cody was poised to get a shot at 135. I think it's feasible that Cody fights Glenn for the World Series of Fighting 145 championship, and then maybe we see a rematch between Karakhanyan and Lance Palmer for the next title contender.
Sounds fair to me.
Okay, all right. Well, let's look at some of the other fights here on this card. We had Jay-Z Cavalcante, and he took on Melvin Guillard. And Dave, I'm not really sure why Cavalcante was standing that much with Melvin Guillard. I know Cavalcante has some power, but this dude's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt many times over, and Guillard has been submitted several times in MMA career, and I think the majority of Guillard's losses are by submission, and Cavalcante just didn't decide to go that route at all. And if you're going to stand and bang with Melvin Guillard, there are a few people who have walked away without getting hurt badly and finished. Standing up with him, and that's what happened. You stood up with Guillard. Guillard was able to land those heavy power punches. They were coming the whole evening, and eventually, he threw in some knees and some kicks there, and elbows towards the end, and Cavalcante was out on his feet. The referee had to come in and stop this one at the 2:36 marker in round number 2, and a very impressive World Series of Fighting debut for Guillard, and he probably fights the guy we'll talk about here in the main event coming up.
Yeah, I never really a huge fan of the young assassin, but like you said, I don't know why Cavalcante wants to keep it standing in that fight. Melvin Guillard looked pretty impressive in victory, and really not a whole lot to say about it. I mean, I thought going in he was the more effective striker, and lo and behold, he was. And chances are he'll, like you said, he'll get a main event spot in his next fight.
We're going to kind of gloss over this next fight, just because pretty much what we expected. I mean, John Fitch against Dennis Hallman, two veterans of the sport. John Fitch does what John Fitch does. He brings his lunch pail, I guess, to the decagon, this time not the octagon. He goes in there, he takes you down. Though I will admit, though, Dave, it was one of the more exciting John Fitch fights because he actually did damage. This was one of the few fights I can remember, like, man, John Fitch really messed up Dennis Hallman. In most fights, John Fitch, sure, he controls guys, he dominates them, but I always felt like he never did that much damage. And in this fight, he made it a point to go in there and land damage. And Hallman, man, you got to admit, he's pretty tough for taking that beating, but I actually thought this was a good performance by John Fitch, and to me, realistically, his best performance so far in the World Series of Fighting. Because since leaving the UFC and transitioning over to this organization, I haven't thought he's looked particularly good, and so far it's been justified. Maybe that's the UFC made the right decision to cutting him, but in this fight, he looked like the John Fitch we remember from the UFC.
Yeah, which is he looked impressive, Jim. But it's just when they bring these guys in like Fitch and Hallman, it seems to me, maybe get your opinion here, but it seems to me is you get two guys who don't want. They've been around the sport for so long, over 100 fights combined. They don't want to make a mistake. They're trying to be as safe as possible to where they don't get finished. And it like Dennis Hallman doesn't want to be the stepping stone for John Fitch to resurrect his career and vice versa. And it seems like oftentimes you get a pretty safe fight when you have two former UFC guys in there. And it just doesn't do it for me. It really doesn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, John Fitch probably fights Usmar Polares next, and should be an interesting matchup, should be a fun fight, but it was a John Fitch fight. You shouldn't expect too much out of it. But let's get to that main event. We kind of referenced it earlier with Melvin Guillard. It looks like he's going to take on the winner of this fight, and that is Justin Gaethje, as he once again defends his 155 title here for the World Series of Fighting, as he took on the undefeated one-arm fighter in Nick Newell. And I wouldn't say his career's done, Dave, but we finally found somebody that could stop the takedown against Nick Newell. And once you're able to stop the takedown on Nick Newell, again, he only has one arm. There's only so many striking combinations he can throw. It's pretty much that lead right hand, and yeah, he can kind of come in with the one arm there, kind of the half arm, but the reach obviously is not there. So he has to get real in close to the pocket. And I think for some reason, Dave, much like the Cavalcante fight, he kind of wanted to prove that he can bang a little bit, and he got in close to Gaethje. And Gaethje, my God, this guy can throw. He keeps coming. I mean, it's not the most technical. I think he can kind of tighten up a little bit. They are a little bit looping, but man, this guy just puts a whooping on people. He just throws so hard. I mean, for a guy this young, I haven't seen too many. Maybe the guy he might be taking, Guillard. He just throws hard, and he was putting damage all over Nick Newell. And once he took that damage early in the first round, he was desperately trying for a takedown. But at that point, there wasn't a lot of energy behind that. I mean, leg kicks, knees, bombs, elbows. Gaethje was throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Nick Newell, and eventually Nick Newell, I think it was part damage, but I think he just passed. He was done. He was just wore down by the damage, and this one was officially stopped at the 309 marker in round number 2. And like I said, I'm not sure if Nick Newell is done, but it proved that once he takes on a guy with high-level striking that's able to stop the takedown, Nick Newell is going to be rendered pretty much, not able to win. It's not the great way to phrase it, but he's rendered useless almost, and that's kind of what it looked like in this fight.
Jim, it's the story with Nick Newell is great. It really is, but I'm trying to throw a visual at you. He's got a full left arm. Is that what it is, or is it his right?
No, he leads with the right, and then this arm would kind of be cut. It was right here is where it stops, somewhere around there.
Well, as I was watching it, I don't understand how the blueprint wasn't already out there, because the body kicks to what would be Newell's left side, kicking with the fighter's right leg, is wide open because he can't parry the kick away, and it was something that that Gaethje was using to kind of open up the punching combinations, because once he kind of got the kicks to the body, it kind of got him to think that I got to think about this side, but then try to protect up here, and then it seems like the game plan to beat Nick Newell is to mix it up and stop the takedowns, because if you go at the side that has the one full-size arm, then he's going to do fine defending it. But it seemed like Justin Gaethje was the first one to essentially just mix it up, and that's what he did.
And also pressure. I mean, he was not sitting back or anything. He was coming right at Nick Newell, and that's the thing. He pressured, and I don't think Nick Newell had really ever been pressured before. I think people were sitting and waiting and trying to stop the takedown, knowing that was coming. But Gaethje felt confident in his takedown defense that he didn't have to try to sit back and wait. That he could just go in there and blitzkrieg Nick Newell, and he felt confident he could stop the takedown, and that's what happened. And as Nick Newell gets higher in competition, Justin Gaethje, I think probably being the best guy he's ever fought, you're going to get guys who are confident like that. You know what I mean? I was having a discussion with my friends the other day. I mentioned, oh yeah, Nick Newell, the one on fire. They're like, yeah, he's pretty good. I was like, yeah, he's good, but he'd probably lose to really top competition, probably even this week. And they're like, oh, I bet he could win. I'm like, if Anthony Pettis fought Nick Newell, like he would get crushed. And they're like, no, he would do this and this. I was like, no. I'm like, no, he wouldn't. And Gaethje's not at the level of an Anthony Pettis yet, but he's a guy that can get there. I mean, I think he showed definite skills on Saturday night. And every time Gaethje fights, we've seen him fight, like 5 or 6 times now in the World Series of Fighting. I'm slowly becoming a fan of his, Dave. I mean, this kid's pretty awesome to watch.
Yeah, he's a finisher. He's exciting, and yep, it's a guy that's got a ton of upside. We'll say that. Hey.
Go ahead, Dave.
Are we done with round 1?
Well, I want to do a couple quick hitter headlines here just to get our quick thoughts. One, okay. Dominic Cruz scheduled for a fight, 178. Right. He will take on Take Mizugaki. I want to get your percentage that he will actually fight, that he will not come up with another injury and have to cancel another bout. So what's the percentage Dominic Cruz actually goes through with the weigh-ins and walks into the octagon there for UFC 178?
97.3% chance of an actual fight.
97. Wow, that's pretty high. I'm going to go with 42. I think it's going to be pretty low. I just have a feeling. I mean, he's had, 3 or 4 fights scheduled in the last, year, and he's missed every one. So I'm putting it low, even under 50%. And UFC 176 was canceled on August 2nd. It was supposed to be Jose Aldo against Chad Mendes. That title fight will be pushed back later into the year, but the card in general will be scrapped. It was supposed to be at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California. We talked about some other stuff, and we kind of talked about it big and length, especially when 151 was canceled. But just real quickly, Dave, do you think this maybe, once again, brings up the question of too many shows? Maybe a little less shows wouldn't cause cancellations? Because really, that's the only thing I could think of is guys were stretched out too thin that they didn't want to move certain things up to 176. Because otherwise, theoretically, they have enough guys on the roster that they shouldn't have had to cancel this fight, but because they're already booked, I don't know. That's the only thing I could really think of, because it is a shame that we get to see another card canceled here in 2 years, and we hadn't seen any the previous 10. Zuffa has owned the company.
I'm really, really sick and tired of there's too many cards, there's too many this, there's too many that. Then don't order the pay-per-views that people don't like. Like, if you don't want to see Jose Aldo fight, don't order the pay-per-view. I can't get enough of the fights. I want to see every one of them. The New Zealand card, the Fight Pass stuff. Like I want to soak it all in. And these people are saying, oh, like they're never going to come back to Los Angeles because this event got canceled. Well, they're never going to come back to Los Angeles because the Kings, the Clippers, and the Lakers all play there, and there's never going to be an open Saturday for the UFC to get back there. So that's one reason why they're never going to come back to LA.
Well, in LA, they can only do it during the summer because none of those teams play during the summer.
Right. And I mean, I have to assume that we'll talk about it later, but I have to assume that there was a main event planned, but because of what happened on Saturday, that that was kind of their fallback plan, and it didn't work out. So now they had to scrap the fight. Well, I'm assuming that that's not what they wanted to do.
Well, of course they don't want to cancel event, but I'm going to bring up something that they could have even done this for 151. Instead of making it a pay-per-view, because obviously if they feel they're not going to get buys, they're going to lose some money. Couldn't they just transition that event, still call it, in that case, it would have been 151 and this 176, whatever the next best fight was, and just turn that into one of these fight nights and move some of them down and just call that fight night whatever and renumber the, you know what I mean? I feel like they had, the main event gets canceled, but they still had, 8 or 9 other fights that are already booked and would have been good to go for that event. Maybe it's not Staples Center worthy, but you're telling me you couldn't find any other smaller venue around Los Angeles? You know what I mean? There's a lot of places in LA you can book events at, and you're the UFC. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even if you just then had to move it to Vegas, Vegas will give you any room you want or arena. You know what I mean? Even on a month's notice, because that's where you're at. You work with those people all the time. I just feel like it still could have been salvaged, and maybe not a pay-per-view, but it could have been moved to a fight night or like a free preview. You know what I mean? I feel like the fight still could have went on. And again, like you said, you can't get enough of it. Like I think what was the next biggest fight? Wasn't Jacare supposed to be on that, Dave?
Yeah, I think Jacare is on the undercard of that.
So you're telling me if Jacare was moved up to the main event and just was a fight night that you wouldn't watch it? You know what I mean? Like I would watch it, you would watch it. What's the difference whether it was officially a pay-per-view or not?
Yeah, it was Jacare Mousasi was the co-main event.
You're telling me that's not good enough for a fight night main event? Considering Mousasi's already headlined 2 fight nights, and I think Jacare, he's headlined Strikeforce cards. You're telling me that's not good enough to, transition that to Fox? They haven't had a Fox fight in a while. You're telling me that couldn't have been a Fox fight?
Yeah, the Fox fight is the week prior.
I mean, there's options.
I know your point. I get your point, but I'm saying it's the week prior. But
FX, Fox Sports 1, put it on Fight Pass.
I read somewhere that it was on Twitter. I don't know if the validity of it, but I read somewhere that if they canceled it, they would have had to refund the money.
Well, they did cancel it.
No. If they canceled the pay-per-view and turned it into Fox or something, they would have had to refund the money because it had something to do from the business end that if it's on pay-per-view, they can charge more for tickets, but if it's on Fox, they don't necessarily charge as much for tickets. I don't know the validity of it. If I can find it, I'll post it on our Facebook page.
Well,
but to make it go from like a Fight Pass card or a pay-per-view to a Fight Pass card, there's money.
Yeah, but there's money. If they cancel the event, if you already bought tickets, you're going to have to refund money anyway.
Correct.
So what's the difference whether you refund half a ticket or a full ticket?
That's,
right? Am I right though? It's just we're talking about numbers here. It's okay. Right. So if you pay $300 front row seat for a pay-per-view, then it's a Fox event, so it's only $150. So they're refunding you $150 instead of refunding you the full $300. You know what I mean? You're saving money, right? You're still getting money.
I agree. I wish it was still happening, but
I mean, we're talking about Here's the thing: we're not talking. If World Series of Fighting had their main event pull out and they cancel an event, or same thing like when Strikeforce had that Melendez fight not happen, you can see that because people aren't going to justify spending money or pay-per-view or whatever on those events. But this is the UFC. This is the largest sport or organization for the sport. People want to see UFC fights, and I don't care where it's at. They can move it. I think people would want to see that. And sure, maybe the main event isn't as strong and all that, and you can't do pay-per-views, but what do you think? What looks better? Hey, we're going to move it to Fox or FX or Fox Sports 1, still have the fight, or we're just not going to have it. I feel like those are two extremes, and maybe not two extremes, but I feel like canceling it is the extreme.
Correct.
I don't know. For a company that prides itself on doing the things for the fans, I think, and as real as it gets, and giving us all these fights, I feel like better options could have been made, and they had options available. All right, well, we got our rants out there, Dave, so let's go to round number 2 here on Beyond the Cage, presented by Fight Chicks. Inside of round number 2, we're going to talk about the Ultimate Fighter 19 finale, which again was from Las Vegas. this past weekend. And Dave, before we get to the fights, we said we'll talk about your experience. So talk about your experience here at the Ultimate Fighter 19, which when we get to the main card and actually break down the fights, had to be a pretty fun night because, man, these fights were going bing, bang, boom.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like was the fact that I missed the Daniel Spawn fight. That was the one I wanted to see, but traffic is bad walking through
Did
the
you
arenas.
record it at home?
I did, so I got to see it. But I actually
live.
I actually walked into the arena just as they were raising Martine's hand, being victorious on the undercard. So I got to see the entire main card and 2 on the undercard. Just kind of circumstances the way they were. But afterwards Dana said that this was the most attended Ultimate Fighter finale. It felt like there was a ton of people, and with this probably being BJ's last walkout, when he came out, it was pretty cool. Goosebumps.
Came out to Aloha 75.
Yeah, Ariel tweeted
really
that
hear it on the broadcast.
Ariel said it was a little bit of a remix from his normal one. I don't remember. It's been so long since he came out. It may have been a remix, but it was pretty cool. Once we get into the fights, we can talk about it. But it was pretty cool because there's some names on there that I've begun to follow and look back at other fights and stuff like that. So all in all, it was a good night. I did get to see the usher at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center ask Chuck Liddell for his ticket when he was walking to his floor seats. I'm sure she's on the unemployment line this morning, but if she would have,
it had to have been her first day, right?
Literally, if she would have looked up there, they've got those big posters of the events that have taken place there, and Chuck Liddell's face is on the 3 that are right in front of where she worked. But good for Chuck. He showed his ticket like any other normal legend would. Ken Shamrock
had a ticket. I thought he just walks in the place like, I'm Chuck Liddell. They just let him.
Yeah. But no, I saw what's his name? Vilder, the guy that's the voice of
Wilder Valderrama.
Yeah,
Valderrama.
Yeah.
From that '70s show.
Yeah, I tried to yell at him. I tried to say, "Hey, Handy Manny," because my kids watch that show and he's the voice of it, the cartoon. Okay. Like I said, Ken Shamrock was there. I mean, there were fighters all over the place. So I'm sure there was a lot of people there Saturday, but my seats were much better Sunday, so I was able to see all the celebs.
Yeah, and I think putting the Ultimate Fighter finale right after 175 and the expo like that definitely made more people attending than had it just been a regular Saturday or Sunday in Las Vegas. Definitely probably boosted the attendance, and also, sure, BJ Penn would have drawn a certain level of hype to the event had it just been a standalone fight, Dave, but that may be something the UFC will do more with their Ultimate Fighter finales, putting it maybe on a similar weekend or similar location to a bigger fight like that to draw more people getting in because they're already in town that weekend, and that might help draw, especially the Ultimate Fighter finale. Maybe not the fight nights or whatnot, but I think that was a pretty good move. And go ahead.
Most of the people that I spoke to that were coming to the expo, a lot of people that I spoke to did not go to 175, but
because of the prices, probably.
Yeah, the prices were high, but they said that yes, they did go. They were going to go to the finale, so that's good. UFC 175 was going to sell out regardless of if it was the expo, so it's
right, because I mean, instead of paying, like I said, $300, you pay your $50 on your pay-per-view. You can watch it wherever, and then maybe you only pay double that, and then you go see the Ultimate Fighter finale live. You know what I mean?
And in Vegas there, they had quite a few viewing parties and.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, or you could have just went to one, probably just about anywhere, and saw it for free. You just had to buy some chicken wings or whatever.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get to the fights here. The first fight of the night was at 125 pounds, so it was already off to a good start as Dustin Ortiz took on Justin Scoggins. And believe it or not, though, Scoggins, I think, only had one victory in the UFC previously. He was actually the favorite in this matchup, which I thought was surprising. And regardless of that, though, Dave, it was a very close fight. We got two guys that are both trying to break in the top 10 of the flyweight division. And the first two rounds, we saw a lot of grappling. Scoggins, I thought, showed off a pretty impressive submission game. Now, he didn't finish Ortiz, but the way he was setting some of these up and moving and transitioning on the ground, especially in that first round, I thought he had a very good submission game, and he was clearly the better stand-up fighter than the two, and he was able to showcase that a little bit, and thought he definitely won round one. Round two was more Ortiz. That was what Ortiz likes to do, get the fight to the ground, be on top, lie on ground and pound, and did that for the majority of the round. So that round wasn't as exciting. And then round number three, once again, I thought was kind of up in the air. Both guys, Scoggins was able to kind of go back to get some of his striking off, get some of those submissions off. Ortiz was on top for a little bit. That third round was really close. Both guys knew that it was probably one apiece, and they had to do something to get the victory. And when it was all said and done, Ortiz was the one that got the split decision victory on this night. And I really just think it was the overall wrestling and toughness, the ability to stay on top, and I think is what let Dustin Ortiz win this fight.
Yeah, what I took away from this fight, Jim, was the 125-pound division is still a little bit small. They have 30 125-pounders, but if we have guys like these two, the 125-pound division is going to be just fine. Both of these guys, probably could improve a little bit on their striking, but these guys have good grappling. I didn't think either guy tired out. The 125-pound division is going to be just fine, especially if everybody is, remotely close to what these two guys were. That was what my thoughts were on the fight, and that's considering it was a grappling contest, and I'm usually not a big fan of watching grappling contests live. So, I was hoping they'd stand and bang, but they didn't, but I was still somewhat entertained. So, good for both of these guys.
And like I said, the second round was kind of boring, but if you look at the first and third in terms of grappling, we talk about the flyweights. Most people talk about the speed with the hands. I thought the speed with their transition, Dave, was excellent. And like I said, besides the second round where Ortiz was comfortably on top, like you said, I thought this was pretty entertaining. You tell most people, yeah, it was mostly a grappling fight. They're like, well, this one was pretty solid. Like I said, for 10 minutes anyways.
Hey, speaking of grappling real quick, they had the Grappler's Quest at the Expo. Kat Zingano 2-0. How about that?
I guess that knee's feeling better, huh?
How about 2-0? And then the UFC said that she had to go sign at a booth, so she couldn't compete anymore. Ouch.
Oh well. Got to make that quiche, like I said.
Yeah.
All right. The next fight of the evening was at heavyweight as Derek Lewis took on Guito Incente. I think I said no. Incente? Oh,
yeah,
man.
I think it was Incente.
No, Incenti. Guito Incenti. That was how I said. And they mentioned Incenti has flirted with 205 pounds. And
he needs to
after
continue
watching
to
this
flirt.
fight, Dave, I don't think he can hang in there. I mean, Derek Lewis, I think they said he cuts to make 265. So you're messing with a large dude there on the broadcast. And not only just the size thing, it's a power thing. I mean, he was able to handle, stop and takedowns. He wasn't getting muscled that much, but it's the power difference, Dave. And when Sente was getting hit by these bombs, I mean, he could only take so much, and the referee had to come in and stop this one at 3:30, and really that was the difference. Just the power of Derek Lewis was too much for him, and Dave's going to get to his recap here, and I'm not sure what the future holds for Derek Lewis, but definitely always good to see young heavyweights in a division that we've been talking about for the last couple of years has kind of looked depleted.
Yeah, Derek Lewis was pretty impressive. Dude, he missed. Did you see that punch that he missed where he punched the mat?
Yeah.
Oh my God, If he would have hit Incente, he might have weighed 205 immediately after that punch. It was brutal. No, this dude, you know what I like about him? I'm going to tell you what I like about him. This guy, when he knows he's got heavy hands, but if you go back and watch the fight, he's very, very controlled. He didn't chase after his opponent. He said, I'm not chasing you. I weigh 270 pounds. I'm not going to burn my gas tank out chasing you. The dude, he was calm, cool, and collected, and he waited to land his punches. And that is 5 fights in a row. Actually, if you think about it, Jim, that's 7 in a row, and then there was a no contest thrown in there. So this guy finishes fights at the heavyweight division, and I spoke to him afterwards. I just showed the picture up there, but
You'll probably have to show it again. I don't think people saw it because I was talking.
There was I spoke to him after the fight, and basically what he had said was, because he did the belt thing, the discount double check, saying he doesn't want a title shot, but he wants that's where he's going, that's his goal, and he wants to move up the rankings, and he's not trying to be a jerk when he calls people out, but he said that Matt Mitrione's healthy, that he'd like to fight Matt Mitrione, which I think would be a good fight if Derek can come in and beat a Matt Mitrione type guy. I mean, I think that puts him right there with I think it's a perfect fight to schedule. I mean, both guys are healthy, and there he is after the fight.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And I'm going to be honest now. You didn't tell me before the fight, before the show, that you had talked to Derek Lewis and that he had mentioned he wants Matt Mitrione. I actually was just about to bring up, what if he fought Matt Mitrione, whose fight got canceled this weekend?
Yeah, it was actually fairly entertaining.
That's a fight they can book fairly soon here.
Yeah, it was this fight. Afterwards, he said, "I'd like to fight a Matt Mitrione," and Mitrione was drunk in the crowd, and he was like,
"That sounds about right."
He's like, "Oh, sign it up." He was like yelling at Dana, like, "Sign it! I'll fight him right now!" Like, so, I think Mitrione took it the wrong way, but to me, Lewis is very humble. If you go back, he was actually in prison for 3.5 years. I don't know if you were aware of that, Jim. He doesn't really talk about his past. This guy served his time in prison. He served his debt to society. And, if you go back and look at it, he's fought all over the United States, and he's just made a progression going forward. I mean, I think, like you said, I think it's great to have new heavyweights coming up. And, yeah, good for Derek Lewis.
Well, let's get to the pair of contract fights here for the Ultimate Fighter finale in the light heavyweight and middleweight divisions. Let's start first with the middleweight division. Before this fight, Dave, I didn't really think Eddie Gordon had much of a chance. Now, he's a little stockier, maybe a little thicker, maybe fits 185 a little better than Diego Lima, who looks to fight at 170 after the show, much like his brother, Bellator champion Douglas Lima. But even with that, Dave, I thought Lima was the more technical striker, the more explosive striker, and with the fact that, he can fight at 170, you would think would be able to go a little longer, not having to cut as much weight as Eddie Gordon. But Eddie Gordon, who I wasn't really impressed with during the show, to be honest. I mean, a guy that definitely has some power, but I always thought was, not enough output from him. I'd like to see more output. And this time around, he was able to land one of those big, powerful bombs, in the right spot, and then didn't let Lima breathe. And when you got a guy hurt, that's what you got to do. You got to go in there for the kill. And he was just barraging Lima, who just couldn't, whatever position, whether he standing, Eddie Gordon flipped around, got him down on the back a couple times, and he was trying to cover up the best he could, but Gordon just kept it coming. And much like we said, some people maybe use that Roy Nelson strategy where we don't really see them do that great on the show or that exciting on the show, and then they explode in the finale. I'm not sure if that was Gordon's strategy, but that's kind of how it ended up working out for him, and Eddie Gordon becomes the Ultimate Fighter for season 19 in the middleweight division.
I'm going to show off. I was lucky enough to be down in the hall after the fight. Check that out. Eddie Gordon.
Oh, you're moving it too much. All right, I think we got it.
Eddie Gordon with the trophy. It was pretty cool. Yeah, you pretty much nailed it, Jim. I don't really have too much else to say. He was a guy that was on the show you didn't think a whole lot about. Completely different fighter than what was on the show. But if he can keep up the output that he had in that fight and the intensity and the strength and all that, I think he'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, on the show that wasn't the same guy that we saw. But good for Eddie Gordon, and yeah, we'll see what the UFC does for him next. So, a good way to kick off the TUF 19 tournament finals.
Well, the next fight, also for the contract in the light heavyweight division, this one didn't last very long either, as Corey Anderson took on Matt Van Buren, once again a pair of Team Edgar teammates against each other. And Anderson, known for his wrestling, All-American, all that stuff, and we thought, he might showcase that. But early on, despite a little height and reach disadvantage against Matt Van Buren, who's a very tall and lanky 205-pounder, Corey Anderson, he trains with those guys at Rufus Sport, and I think he's starting to pick up, some of that striking technique, and he's coming at it very technical, which is good. He wasn't leaving a lot of openings, and he was able to find the openings in Matt Van Buren and just come right at him and land some straight power punches. I mean, they were pretty much right down the middle, Dave. These were not like looping shots or anything. He just came right at him down the middle, and Van Buren, much like Diego Lima, he tried to battle out of it. He tried to do something to shake Corey Anderson, but he was not able to, and the referee had to come in and stop this one at the 101 marker. And maybe a little different than Eddie Gordon, because Anderson showed with his wrestling dominance that he definitely had the skills to win in this weight class. But like I said, he just kind of put it all together and went out with a big bang here in this contract fight.
Yeah, and he got to take a picture with the Juice.
There he is. He's beasting 25-8.
That's right. No, same thing. Corey Anderson, you didn't expect him to have the win via strikes. I mean, thought he would take Van Buren down and grind him out for 3 rounds. So, it was a welcome finish. As a fan in attendance, it was pretty awesome. Jim, I'm going to be a fanboy for the next little bit here, but there's just something about watching Corey Anderson and Eddie Gordon. Like, we saw them leading up to the show and stuff. We saw them walking around the hotel and all that kind of stuff. There's just something about the fact that those guys walked in to the arena and, they were just, this is their chance to be in the UFC. And then there's just something about being around those guys after their entire life just changed. You know what I mean? Like, when me and you go to work, we put our hours in, we make our cash, and we get on out of there. These guys went in there, and for lack of a better term, their entire life just changed. They're always going to be the TUF 19 winner, no matter what happens. If they go 0-15 the rest of their career, they're always going to be that. They're always going to be a part of mixed martial arts history, and it's just cool because these guys, they went in, they were stressed, they came out. You couldn't have seen 2 happier guys and 2 more well-deserving guys. So it's pretty impressive.
The main event of the evening at 145 pounds is BJ Penn fought Frankie Edgar for the 3rd time. Looking at this fight, it went how I thought it would. Frankie Edgar getting the victory. It's a 3rd round knockout victory. BJ, he looked all right at 145. He didn't look super drawn out or anything, but for a guy that really wanted this fight, Dave, and to prove that the first 2 fights against Frankie Edgar was somewhat of an aberration, maybe a mistake, he did not come out with a guy looking to prove something, and nor did he come out like a guy that was fighting for the last time. And he was standing very upright, which I have never really seen him do before. Was kind of like a twinkle toes kind of style, just kind of walking around. And I guess he was trying to counter Frankie. I guess that was his strategy. I'm not really sure because, with standing upright, you're obviously kind of lessening your reach a little bit there. And Frankie moves in and out so well. His footwork is so good. He's a hard guy to go in there thinking counter first. I don't think that's a great game plan. And Frankie, mixed up the wrestling really good, was able to take BJ Penn down 3 times, was successful in all 3 attempts. And BJ wasn't doing much to defend punches. He was really trying to set up submissions. And as far as I know, Dave, I'm pretty sure Frankie Edgar's never been submitted in his career. And if anything, since the last time they fought, which was, believe it or not, 4 years ago, I couldn't believe it was that long ago that they fought the second time. I think he has his black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if anything, he's gotten better at Jiu-Jitsu since they last fought under, Renzo Gracie and Ricardo Almeida. And you weren't going to catch him in a submission, and BJ Penn really just kind of went in there. I don't know. He really wasn't doing anything, Dave. And Frankie Edgar, yeah, he beat BJ Penn, but it's not like Frankie Edgar did anything that he doesn't normally do. I think this was just for a guy, like I said, that was trying to go in there and prove something. What turned out to be his last fight, he definitely didn't leave the octagon, I think, in a blaze of glory, and I think should have just went out, tried guns and blazing, and tried to knock Frankie's head off. I think that's what I would have tried to do, and we didn't get to see that, and what we did see was kind of a shell of a man who used to be one of the greatest fighters in the sport, and it definitely was time for him to hang him up afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back. The walkout for BJ Penn. I was never a huge BJ Penn guy. Like, I never got on the bandwagon for that. I respect what he's done for the sport. Division champ in 2 different divisions. I respect all of that. I respect him for what he's done. But when he came out, I don't know how it came across on TV, but like just talking about it right now, I have goosebumps. It was amazing. Every person in that arena stood up, was taking video. I got video, was taking pictures. It was pretty impressive, Jim. And if you've never been to Vegas for a fight or a big level fight like that,
I think I'm gonna have this in the background playing while you talk about his entrance, which is his entrance song, Aloha 78, by Israel Kamakaole.
Nice. No, but I mean, it was just one of those things where you kind of realize what you were seeing. Like, this is the last walk for this guy. And I mean, it was a pretty emotional thing. Like I said, not trying to be a super fanboy here, but it was damn cool. Like, it's really hard to explain. The other thing is Frankie Edgar, much like we talked about Cody Bollinger in his fight for the World Series of Fighting, Frankie Edgar should have won this fight, and he went out there and took care of business. He didn't take any unnecessary risk. I thought Frankie looked very crisp. His footwork looked good. His strikes looked good. His takedowns looked real good. The unfortunate thing is he beat a guy who hasn't won since 2010. So while his victory was impressive, it should not get him an immediate title shot. He needs to fight somebody. The word going around was, how about he fight Ricardo Lamas? What do you think about that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, because look, you got Mendez will be taking on Otto sometime this year. Obviously, it's not going to be August 2nd. Winner of that faces Cub Swanson. So the winner of Mendez, Aldo, Swanson will have to face somebody, right? How about the winner of Edgar and Lamas?
I'm good with it.
And then you maybe kind of can throw in one of the losers of that, maybe takes on the winner, like we talked about, I think it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, maybe Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira.
Yep. Make sure you send that in to Joe so that he can start booking that stuff.
All right, well, let's get to our third and final round here in this week's Beyond the Cage. Round number 3 brought to you by our friends at MMAforlife.ca. Follow them on Twitter at _MMAforlife. And for round number 2, that was MMAinsider.net. Follow them on Twitter at MMAinsider.net if I didn't say that. So 2 sites, check them out. Great stuff. Of course, Fight Chicks presents Beyond the Cage here.
All right, Jim.
Oh,
You notice anything on my screen? Do you?
You're wearing your Fight Chicks shirt.
No, no.
Oh, the Octagon. Well, you are wearing your Fight Chicks shirt, though.
Yeah, yeah. I did that in round 1 too. No, finally got one of these when I was out there. It's pretty cool. Little octagon like
How much
necklace
do those
deal.
things run?
Like $20.
No, that's not bad.
Somebody asked me if I was on the Ultimate Fighter. No, sir.
No, you gotta
He
have
went-
one of those
he goes-
jerseys.
He goes, "Hey, were you on the Ultimate Fighter?" And I went, "Yeah, no."
You kind of do look like Loden Kincaid a little bit from season 1, so there you go. You just said, "Oh yeah, I'm Loden Kincaid," and they've been like, "Whoa, that's sweet."
Yeah, you should Google me so I know what you're talking about.
You obviously didn't watch season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter. Google Loden Kincaid season 1 Ultimate Fighter, and you'll kind of notice you kind of look like him a little bit. Not like a complete match, but someone who like if you kind of said that, they might think that's true. So, anyways, all right. Well, 175 was supposed to have 5 fights. It only had 4. Stefan Struve, backstage, I guess, fainted and passed out, and the fight was canceled minutes before it was supposed to happen. It was supposed to be the 3rd fight of the night. And before we get to the 4 fights that did happen, Dave, with this happening, it was obviously over a year layoff. Stefan Struve coming back from heart problems, a condition that much thought it wouldn't allow him to compete in the sport ever again. Now this happens minutes before his fight goes on. We talked about percentage earlier with Dominic Cruz, his fight actually happened. I think there's a very real possibility that Stefan Struve actually never fights in the UFC again. I think this might be the final nail in that coffin.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Everybody was kind of upset that the fight got canceled. I was upset because I wanted to see Struve fight, but look, I don't want to see anybody die in the cage. I really don't. If he passed out, he definitely shouldn't be in the octagon. I mean, these are high-level athletes. If you're having problems backstage, he shouldn't be in there. And to go along with his heart condition, he needs to sit down, reevaluate, and see what the heck's going on. But the chances of us seeing Struve, I think, are very small. And it's unfortunate.
It is. Like I said, the heavyweight division doesn't have a lot of young up-and-coming guys. And I know Struve's been on the scene for a while, but the guy's still only 25 years old. And that's the shame. It's not a guy at the end of his career. It's a guy pretty much right in the prime, right in the middle of his career, and a guy that, I think it was a couple years ago, Roy Nelson fought him and beat him and go, yeah, I beat this kid, now he's 22, 23 years old, but wait till he gets, 5 more years in him. He probably could be heavyweight champ. And that was the level I think he was going on, just because he was one of the few guys that was that young and that good. I think he's a guy that you could project that high. And now, that doesn't happen. And now, like I said, once again, you start looking at the list, like who's next, after some of these guys. Because, don't get me wrong, Cain Velasquez is really good, but he's already 30 years old. You know what I mean? He's already at his peak physical condition. He's not, in 5 years from now, he's not going to be better than he was. You know what I mean? Junior Dos Santos maybe can stay a little longer. He's only 28, but even then, let's say he gets the title back when he's 34. That's maybe 2-3 more. You know what I mean? It starts progression, and it starts looking thin. Because some of these other guys at heavyweight are pretty old. And heck, even if Cormier was still in the division, Cormier is 34. You know what I mean?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. But like I said, dude, I don't want to see anything happen. Like, as much as I want to see Struve, I want him. There's other things that Struve can do for the UFC. He's from Denmark, right?
The Netherlands, close enough.
Yeah. There's got to be something that he can do over there. He could be some sort of ambassador, maybe do some training stuff. The UFC can take care of him, and he can still be used. You know what I mean? Just these guys do the same thing that we do every day, Jim. They put their pants on. They're just trying to make their money and move on with life. And I don't want to see somebody stretchered out of the cage.
Well, let's get to the first fight of the evening, 135 pounds, Marcus Brimage against Russell Doan. Brimage making his debut at 135 pounds, dropping down from 145. And, Brimage looked good. He didn't look drawn out at all. I thought he had, still looked like the guy we remember at 145, still throwing some big, powerful shots. And, Russell Doan, definitely a guy that doesn't have a lot of stand-up skills. He showed a little bit combinations, a little bit with the leg kicks, but I think overall as this fight wore on, Brimage definitely showed that he was the better stand-up striker, and I think was starting to kind of hurt Doan. And Doan's only option was to get this fight to the ground. And looking at the ground game, Doan was successful on 3 of 9 takedowns, so pretty good takedown defense for Brimage. Brimage himself was 2 of 2 on his takedowns. Overall striking, Doan outstruck Brimage just 37 to 33. Both guys throwing under 100 strikes. So, maybe not as exciting as we thought. We were kind of worried that this fight, Dave, wouldn't be a great kickoff. A little underwhelming. When it was all said and done, Doan is the one that walks away with the victory here by split decision. With, I don't know how this happened, Dave. One judge scoring it 30-27 in favor of Doan, and he won 29-28 on the other and 29-28 for Brimage. I'm not sure how you could have scored either fighter 30-27. I thought it was apparent Doan got the first round, Brimage got the second. I thought the third round was kind of a toss-up, but I probably would have gave it to Brimage. I wouldn't say Brimage got robbed because this was a close fight, and at the end of the day, you only land 33 strikes, in 15 minutes. I don't think you have a lot of room to complain about being robbed. But I thought Brimage did enough to walk away with the victory in this one.
Yeah, when we heard 30-27, we thought the same thing. I thought the same way. 1 to Doan, 2 to Brimage, and 3 kind of throw it in the air and see what happens. I definitely thought Marcus Brimage looked like he can stick around at 135. And not shocked that Doan got the victory. Kind of a weird booking. We talked about it before of why these guys kicked off the main card. But hey, we're not making decisions here. That's the UFC, and it worked out. But before we move on to the middleweight bout, let me give you this little piece of breaking news. The Gegard Mousasi Jacare Souza fight is now going to be on Fight Night 50, September the 5th. Maybe the main event or the co-main event. The one in Connecticut.
Okay. I was going to say, is it the one in Connecticut, the one in Maine? Or is that going down?
Yeah, it's in Connecticut. So at least they're booking them right away, so that's good.
Yeah, that's good because the winner probably gets a title shot. I mean,
yeah,
realistically.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get to the fight at middleweight. Speaking of Ultimate Fighter winners, you had Ultimate Fighter runner-up, I guess, here in Uriah Hall as he took on Thiago Santos. And I tell you what, Santos had a lot better striking than I thought. And in Uriah Hall's defense, he had a broken toe, I think, heading into the second and third round. So his movement and maybe pop, trying to plant and do stuff off that foot. And I mean, I guess he was still kicking with it, but still, that had to wear him. He said, he was trying to muscle through it and, 15 minutes to the rest of his life and, all that stuff. And, he did an amazing job of powering through it. But, it wasn't at the same intensity and velocity that he can do some things because of that toe being like that. And to me, the factor of this fight and how it went, how it played out, it was the kicks of Santos against the punches of Uriah Hall. That's kind of how I thought this fight played out. And Santos definitely established those leg kicks and some body kicks early on in the first round. I actually thought he took the first round. And then in round number 2, Hall was figuring out that this guy's pretty much just throwing kicks. He's not throwing as many punches. If I can go in there, throw some combinations with my hands, I think I can tag him and I think I can hurt him. And I think that's what Hall did. He realized that Santos wasn't as confident throwing punches, and Hall was starting to throw more punches, I think, moving in, cutting the distance down. He was still taking leg kicks, don't get me wrong, but he was doing things to counteract that, and definitely, I think, got Santos a wobbly little times. Obviously, didn't finish him, didn't do anything highlight reel. Looking at the final strikes, Dave, Santos actually outstruck Hall 48-42. Hall did land a takedown Santos was 0-2 on his takedowns, and you know, I think it got more exciting as it went on. Both guys throwing combinations. It could have been a little more exciting. You know, the output wasn't there. Obviously, Hall hampered by injury, but I think Santos, despite the leg kicks, I think he was still worried the whole time that Hall could land something that could knock him out, and I think he was still tentative most of the fight, and was really surprised with the broken toe. I'm sure Santos had to have known a difference from Hall. I'm really surprised he didn't attack the takedown more. I mean, he only attempted 2 takedowns in 15 minutes. I would have thought that would have been more of a strategy, and that might have helped him get a victory, but it was Uriah Hall who gets the split decision, actually unanimous decision victory, scoring 29-28 twice, and even got a 30-27 somehow mixed in there.
Yeah, I would have gone with the foot stomp if I'm Santos. Right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it might. Yeah. I mean, that's. He had to. I feel like he could have exploited that more, and he didn't.
Yeah. You know, here's what I saw. Uriah Hall, when he landed punches, they hurt Santos, and when he landed 2, they hurt him. When they landed 3, they hurt him. But he just didn't want to finish. He would land a combination and then kind of back away. If he just let his hands go, he'd have been done working 15 minutes earlier. But that's just something he's got to work on. You know, what I find very interesting about this fight, and Twitter and Facebook and everything, is after this fight, there's so many different people who are on different sides. Everybody said that was at the expo that Uriah Hall was being a jerk, wasn't shaking hands, and so on and so forth, which I think is slightly ridiculous because this man's got a main card fight on the pay-per-view. If he loses, essentially he's going to get cut, probably. And the UFC kind of put him in a spot where he's got to like shake hands and do all this stuff when, you know, the people who are fighting next week, they don't have to deal with all that on such a big level at the expo in Vegas. Me, I kind of understand it with Hall. I didn't even approach him until after the fight. But this guy went in there, was victorious over, you know, good competition in the UFC with a broken toe that he said he could feel shifting for 2 of the rounds in the fight. That's pretty crazy. And then I even put it on Facebook, Jim. His post-fight speech was awesome. Something to the effect of, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, if you're not chasing your dreams, what exactly are you doing? Don't just exist in life. You got to go out and live life. And that's you can use that in any line of work, but that's pretty good stuff. And you know what? That's a pretty important little message that he put out, especially considering his freaking toe was sticking out of his skin. You know?
Yeah, you know, you mentioned, yeah, he definitely could have threw more combinations, but like I said, when you had that toe and it's in your head, you know, you got to plant on it and everything, and I think that's why we didn't see the frequency. Because yeah, he could have finished Santos. I think he can finish anybody. I don't think it's a lack of finishing skills, or you know, he said, oh, sometimes, you know, Joe Rogan even brought, oh, he's too nice, he doesn't like to finish people and all that, and you know, maybe that's somewhat of a factor. But at the end of the day, if your toe, I mean, they put the camera right up there. His bone was sticking out of the toe. I mean, there's no mistaking that. Believe me, if I had that, and then you're like, yeah, you got to then go try to defend yourself from someone trying to rip your head off. You know what I mean? It's definitely going to be tentative. You're not going to because that's in your head. No matter how much, you know, mentally tough you are, you can't, you know, unless you're. There was that James Bond movie. It was not Die Another Day. The World Is Not Enough, and the main villain in that movie, he had something wrong with his brain that affected his whole body, and he didn't feel pain. You know, maybe if it's something like that where he couldn't feel pain, then maybe he wouldn't have a problem. But he doesn't quite have that luxury.
Yeah, well, what was weird was, you know, everybody in the arena knew he had the broken toe because they kept showing it on the screen. But I thought it was crazy that he'd come out each round, bounce around, do what he was going to do, and then immediately after the final horn rang, he was like, "Oh my God, my toe!" like.
Well, it's because you know he's mentally like, I don't have to do that anymore.
Right. But Pretty impressive fight. Who do you think Uriah Hall gets next? He's kind of gone through with the, wasn't Santos an Ultimate Fighter guy as well?
That could be a guy he could face. I was going to bring up Chris, maybe the winner of that fight, or maybe even a guy like a, you know what? Honestly, the guy, I think he was on, no, he was on the same season Ultimate Fighter. It'd be nice to see him take on Clint Hester, who's fresh off a victory.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, I think there's a. I'm trying to rack my brain here for some other middleweights. Even though he's kind of on a roll right now, and maybe it's a slight step down, but I think Uriah Hall, C.B. Dalloway would even be. You got that classic striker versus wrestler matchup.
I could get behind either one of those, Jim. Those are both good.
So I don't know. Well, let's get to the co-main event of the evening: Ronda Rousey against Alexis Davis for the UFC Women's Bantamweight title. Obviously, I picked Ronda Rousey. I think everybody and their grandmother picked Ronda Rousey to win. But what I was wrong, I said, I think this one's going to last a little longer than people think. Well, I was dead wrong on that, as this thing lasted, 16 seconds. So, as they got in close, they threw some strikes. Ronda got the hip toss, landed right on top, and then that side kind of bulldog headlock just started raining down punches. Then once Alexis Davis' hands kind of ungrasped, Eva Levine came in and stopped it, and that was all she wrote. I mean, this was fast, this was brutal, this was violent, and there are very few people, Dave, that I think are unbeatable. Even when guys were in their prime, like, who's going to beat this guy and who's going to beat that? But as of right now, here in July 2014, this may change next year, but as of right now, I don't think there's any female 135-pound fighter on the planet that can beat Ronda Rousey. I mean, I know she's only 10-0, but it just seems like nobody can counteract her, Dave. I mean, you thought, she just can do submissions. Well, she's proven in her last 2 fights that she can knock you out, too. I mean, very few people have done what she's done at any level of mixed martial arts. I mean, there's so many guys in the UFC, Dave, that are 6-0, 10-0, 15-0. They fought regional promotion, they get to the UFC, we don't see that same person. But Ronda Rousey, regardless of the level, has done the exact same thing from day one, go in there and finish people. And it's just awfully impressive. And I'm not, like, right now, I'm not sure if there's a girl that can beat her. I honestly don't. And I mean, we saw some level of dominance, with Anderson Silva, and that's kind of what I'm comparing it to. I mean, she's like obviously not the same style of fighter, but in terms of level of dominance, she's like the female Anderson Silva, Dave. I mean, I'm not sure if there's anyone that can beat her right now.
I think there is. I really don't want to go off on a tangent. I really don't. But as a fan of Cat Zingano, as a big fan of Cat Zingano, this weekend is ridiculous. Ronda Rousey wins a fight in 16 seconds. And now all of a sudden she's got to be out for 2 months because she broke some cyst or something in her hand. Well, first of all, I don't understand how she could fight if she had this thing. Because how many punches did she landed 11 punches? You mean to tell me that whatever she had in her hand was able to break after 11 punches? Like, I'm not a huge conspiracy theory guy, Jim, and I realize that Cat Zingano's been injured, and that's not Ronda's fault. But every time that Cat is about ready to get back in, something always pops up. Like, we have to throw the Sarah McMahon fight together to capitalize on the Olympics. So now Cat Zingano's ready to fight, right? And Ronda's going to be out for two plus months with this hand thing. So now does Cat sit around and not fight anybody? Or does she risk her number one contendership or risk an injury in that number one contendership fight that she already earned because Ronda wants to sit out? And, lo and behold, look who gets to fight again on the year-end card, Ronda Rousey. Like, I mean, she got to fight she got the pay-per-view for herself, 157, Ronda. Then she fights on the end of the year card with Anderson Silva. Then they turn around and quick book her again for the Olympic thing. Then she gets back on a Weidman card where all these guys are doing the heavy lifting, getting her the pay-per-view numbers where she'll make the money. And now we got to sit here and wait until the end of the year. And it's just...
Well, she was only going to fight one more time this year, though, Dave, regardless of when it was. Right?
Maybe.
Let's say she fights in October. That's 3 months from now, right? She wasn't then going to fight at the end of the year card. You know what I mean? She was only going to fight one more time this year. I mean, it just...
I don't know.
Does it mess things up for Kat? Yeah, but I think Kat was going to have to fight somebody before Ronda. I think we've seen other people get title shots and lose them and all that. I think the UFC was going to give her a non-title fight first anyway. So regardless of when Ronda fights, I don't think really affects what Kat's doing. I think she has to get a fight under her belt real quick first. Even if it's against someone crappy, I don't care. You know what I mean? She should fight. Even if someone lower beats her, and then she'll be ready to go.
Yeah, so let's say that Kat's ready in September, right? Let's say she's ready. Let's say they book her a fight in September, right? Are you going to assume that Kat, the next title fight in the UFC's women's division has to be Ronda Rousey versus Kat Zingano, unless Kat were to lose a fight to somebody?
The only other fight that they could book right now for Ronda Rousey, besides Kat Zingano, would be a rematch with Sarah McMahon. I mean, that ended in some controversy, Dave. I'm just saying, if you're looking for another fight, that would be the only other one. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Well, but it's the only other one that can happen.
This is the tangent that I didn't want to go on, but I'm going to go on. First of all, in my mind, there's no fight that you can book. I'm pretty sure all of these people are coming off of losses. Didn't Liz lose her last fight?
I didn't mention any of those other people. I mentioned one person because of controversy, not because of whether she won or not. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if Ronda Rousey's going to fight at the end of the year and Kat Zingano can't do it regardless of whether it's not enough time, she's not ready to go, she lost a fight, and you want her on that card, who else physically and feasibly could you put in there? Because, again, as you said, if it's on the end of the year card, she's not the main event, so it really doesn't matter.
Right. My point is this. If you look at the top 10, I'm 90% sure that all of these people are coming off of losses except for Miesha Tate in the top 10 of the women's division. And the second thing, when I go on my phone after UFC 175 and I read legitimate 100% paid media members who go to every single event that the UFC puts on, when you write an article that says that now is the time for the UFC to bring in Cyborg or to bring in Gina because she's ran through the division, you should lose your credential. And I'm not saying that because I'm a huge Zingano fan. I'm saying that because these media guys, they get paid to report the news. Once you have a media credential to the UFC, you don't get to play fan anymore, ever again. You're a media member who has to report that kind of stuff. Because the way the UFC's women's bantamweight division sits right now, Kat Zingano has to have that next title shot. If you bring in Gina Carano, if you bring in Cyborg, I know what you're doing. You're trying to make money. You're a business. I get that. But if those people come into the division and get an immediate title shot, you're killing. There's no reason to have a division. There really isn't. Because what does that tell Jessamyn Duke, who's currently ranked number 14? Oh, you can win 13 fights in a row. We're not going to give you a title shot if a movie star can come in. And that was something that really grinded my gears on Saturday, that respected media people were saying, oh, the UFC's got to pay all the money in the world and get Carano in here. That's absolutely ridiculous. 150% ridiculous, man.
It'd be like that stunt they pulled putting James Toney there against Randy Couture.
Well, answer this question: has anybody that you can think of, three people came to mind, and I'll tell you in a second. Has anybody been given a title shot on their first fight in the UFC? The only people that I can think of would be like Cruz, Bendo, and Rousey, but they were given belts because they were champions in other divisions.
Ben Henderson's first fight wasn't for the title.
He didn't have the belt because of...
No, because Pettis beat him. And remember, Pettis was supposed to face the winner of Gray and Frankie, but then it tied, and so Pettis fought Guida and lost. So Pettis didn't get his title unification bout.
Right.
So non-title unification bouts, I don't think there's been a guy who's gotten a title shot on his first appearance.
Right, and you're telling me that Gina Carano can come off a 5-year layoff
in a weight class she's never fought it before?
And see, this is what I'm saying about these some of these media guys. They're saying that Gina deserves to fight, but then the next article that they write says that there's no way that Kat Zingano should just jump into a fight against Ronda Rousey because of the layoff that she's had. But Gina has been off for 5 years, and she's ready to jump right into 135 against Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. See, that's where you and I don't care. I mean, at the end of the day, the UFC is going to book whatever fight they want for Ronda Rousey.
Right.
But to me, whether it's Kat Zingano, whether it's Cyborg Santos, whether it's Gina Carano, maybe I said that twice. Anyways, if it's one of those three girls, they should have a fight before they take on Ronda. I don't care who it is, because I think they all need a fight to get the for Cyborg, it would be to see if she can make the weight. For Carano, it would see two things: if she can make the weight, and can she how long has that lab affect her? And for Zingano, it's to make sure her knee's good, because I want to see Kat Ronda too, Dave. I'm not trying to rain on your parade or anything here, because I know you're a fan of her, but I want, if Kat takes on Ronda, I want to make sure she's at 100%. I don't want after she comes out, she's like, well, I was at 60%, and then it just kind of is like, oh, well, what happens if she was actually at 100%? Now she's going to have to wait, another 4 years for a title shot, while they bring in, like you said, maybe they'll bring in stupid people like Carano and and Cyborg, and it pushes her back, and everybody else is back. And I just don't want to see that happen to her, because I think she's too good of a person and too good of a fighter to have that happen to.
Right. Well, I'm glad we got all that figured out.
All right.
Now we can do the main event.
The main event, Dave, Chris Weidman, Lyoto Machida Middleweight Championship of the World. You got this fight right. I got it wrong. But to me, the story of this fight was Lyoto Machida is the master of sitting back, waiting, countering, finishing, winning. I think more so than anybody else that we've seen so far in the UFC, he seems to do that more than anybody. But in this fight, he sat back too much and allowed Weidman to pressure him with stand-up and with some takedowns. Now, overall, the takedowns, weren't there for Chris as much as they have been in previous fights. Machida showed pretty solid takedown defense. Overall, Weidman was 5 of 13, so definitely under 50% and definitely under his normal ratio there. But by the time this fight got to the third round, because of all that sitting back, looking for that perfect shot, kind of wasn't there. Machida had to go into I got to finish mode, and just had a tremendous fourth and fifth round, while Weidman had never been past the third round before. Definitely cuts a lot of weight to make 185. Was definitely a little slower in those last 2 rounds, and was still throwing some heavy shots, still was countering, landed some takedowns, but Machida definitely turned it on in the fourth and fifth rounds. He kind of maybe was close to a finish, but a little too late, and Weidman gets the victory here, 49-46 on 2 cards, I believe, and 48-47 on another, and I would have scored it probably 48 or 49-46, just giving Machida that 5th round. But I think for Machida, this is a fight where I think he realized most guys, you can do what he just did, sit back, wait to counter. But against Chris Weidman, you can't do that. And if we would have saw more of what Machida did in the 4th round and some of the other rounds, Dave, maybe he wins this fight. But when you sit back and you give away rounds against the guy of caliber of Chris Weidman, and you got to get a finish, that's not a position you want to be in. And Machida, I'm not going to discredit Chris Weidman's performance. It was definitely great, but Machida definitely didn't help himself out in this fight.
Nope. I thought it was a pretty dominant performance. At the end of the third round, I thought it was 3-0. I think 4 and 5 you could give to Machida, though I gave 4 to Weidman.
You gave 4 to Weidman? Round 4?
No, I gave 5 to. I gave 4. Yeah, you're right.
You scored him 4 rounds.
I gave 4 rounds. But no, the 4th round was definitely Machida's.
Okay,
I said that
all right.
backwards.
I was gonna say you were about to get blitzkrieged online there.
Yeah. And then the 5th round was a fun round. I thought the fight was over after Weidman got the takedown. Herb Deed stood them up with about 1:10 left, and from there that place was insane because they thought Machida was going to finish the fight. I thought they were going to finish the fight. I had my hands like this. I was peeking through. I didn't know what the heck was going on. Had my phone going. My wife was recording. It was all shaking. It was a big deal. I just thought it was a pretty dominant performance from Weidman. And then hearing that he hadn't thrown like punches for the last 2 weeks of camp because of something in his shoulder, that's pretty impressive. I didn't think that Weidman tried to rely on his wrestling game at all, which most people thought was going to happen. I just thought it was a good performance. I mean, in a championship fight, to me, I think the most important round is the first round. And I think Weidman took complete control of the first round. And I think that that's where fights get won and lost because, if you're Machida and you come out and win round 1, you show the judges that you just won that round. You put a little bit of doubt in Weidman. And if you do that to Weidman, maybe Weidman comes out a little over-aggressive and you can catch him and finish the fight in the second round. But once you lose that, if you're Machida, you have to come back and win the second round just to keep the fight close because, once you're down 2-0, it's hard to come back. And, he got up 3-0, and guess what? Didn't come back. But once again, Jim, 4th of July weekend in Vegas, Chris Weidman coming out. You probably know the song better than me, but he's got the American flag draped around his neck, the crowd chanting USA. Goosebumps, man. Goosebumps.
Again, it's an output thing. You look at the stats in the rounds. Machida, you could conceivably get to, especially rounds 4 and looking around 5. Those were the only 2 rounds Machida threw, not even landed, just threw over 30 total strikes. In rounds 1 through 3, he threw under 30 every single time, and Weidman was over 30 every single time. And that's the thing. He was not throwing. And look at the end of the fight. These are, again, just thrown strikes. Weidman at 206, Machida at 145. That wasn't going to get the job done tonight. On some nights, can Machida do that? Throw 145, throw under 30 strikes the majority of the round and win? Yeah, he's done it before. But that against a guy like Chris Weidman, you can't do that. You can't give up rounds. Other guys you can give up rounds, but you can't do that against Chris Weidman in the championship fight. And if they rematch, I don't know if that would be immediate or, like I said, you got Vitor mixed in there, the winner of Jacare Mousasi. But, if Machida gets another crack at Weidman, he knows that I have to output. I have to pressure this guy. Maybe I'll get knocked out, but at least I'm not leaving doubt in there. You know what I mean? I'm not putting myself down. And I think, as exciting as this fight was, Dave, I think if we see a second one, we're going to see a tremendous fight because Machida knows I got to go out there and strike. I can't sit back and wait because a perfect opening isn't going to materialize. I have to create an opening. And we haven't seen Machida do that too many times, Dave. When we do, it should be interesting and be kind of scary, and it should be fun.
Yeah, I don't think that they'll book a rematch right away, but, man, Chris Weidman looked pretty good, and, he started that journey through Murderer's Row. Maybe they book Vitor, maybe they do the winner of Mousasi and Jacare, but, kind of Weidman is slowly and surely getting the respect that he deserves for being a great middleweight champion.
Well, before we end, again, thank our partners, VigilanteMMA.com, MMAinsider.net, MMAforlife.ca, BluegrassMMA.com, TopRatedMMA.com. Check out their gear, their website, TopRatedMMA.com. MMASignaturesUSA.com. Our friend AJ at MMA Signatures, he actually just started a brand new kind of like buy, sell, trade for fans called, I think it's MMAForSale.com, Dave. Is that correct?
I believe that's right. I actually texted him and to see if maybe we can get him on to come discuss it.
Yeah, I actually Facebook messaged him as well. So we're going to try to get AJ, not only just obviously to talk about his site where you can have the largest selection to buy MMA signed memorabilia, but this new MMA for sale thing, we're going to talk to him. And we've been wanting to have him on for a while, but with this new launching, definitely get him on. And yeah, definitely our partners, and of course our presenting sponsor in Fight Shakes. And Dave has a couple of cool one-of-one items that he'd like to show off here real quick on the video version.
Yep, I got this from the Tops guys. Jeremy at Tops let me snag this. This was just sitting at the Tops booth. It says, hey, you can buy knockout cards here and stuff. But then on the back, it's kind of cool because they had fighters stop by, and it says like what time they're going to be there, all that kind of stuff. Michael Bisping, Zach McCoskey, Raquel Pennington, Chris Holdsworth, Joe Lozon, Uriah Hall, and Travis Brown. So it's cool to look in the man cave. And then I got this really big poster that's going to be hard to hold up for one person, so I won't. But it's signed by John Jones, Cain Velasquez, Phil Davis, and Daniel Cormier. So shout out to Jeremy over at Tops for hooking that up. Pretty cool.
All right, well, once again, he is Dave Sadler on Twitter at VigilanteJuice. I'm your host, Jim Graham, at Jim Graham. And, boy, Facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast to stay updated on everything. Of course, you're watching this on my personal YouTube channel, but it'll be over on our official YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast, up with all our interviews and all other hangouts and what's to watch stuff on demand. And, of course, you can listen to the show on the Stitcher app as well as iTunes and, of course, the great partner sites I just mentioned before. Any final thoughts here, Dave?
Just got that. Little red ink action from the Alpha. So, no, Vegas was awesome, and trying to catch up on some sleep, and I'll be back at it again next week.
All right, for that man, the Juice, Dave Sadler, I am Jim Graham. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks.